Hey, everybody, welcome to Perpetual Motion, a podcast focused on self care, financial independence, communication, and positive relationships. I'm your host, Dr. Mo Anderson. If you've spent a lifetime serving others, you've got that servant's heart, but you're not reaping the benefits in your business or your spirit, my guest today has this advice. Believe it or not, the transformation of your business and your life starts with the transformation of your thinking. Dr. Taryn MacCarthy has developed the Radical Happiness Program. I love the name of that, Radical Happiness, to help us all live the life of our dreams, both in and outside the workplace. So join us today and learn how to make your dreams come true. Welcome, Dr. MacCarthy.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here today, Dr. Mo. It's so great to be here, Mo. Thank you. I've been looking forward to this all week.
As have I, and I appreciate you being flexible this morning. We had a little scheduling snafu, but here we are making it work. We have to adapt, right?
Always. What a great metaphor for everything. As you were saying it this morning, I was thinking the same thing. We have to be ready to pivot, and we have to be confident that we can.
True that. So, you're the Business of Happiness podcast host, an orthodontist in oral health care like myself, author and speaker, and rapid transformational therapist. You coach on nervous system regulation, stress, and inner fulfillment. Lady, you do it all. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you became a coach for women, primarily in medicine and dentistry?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. It's so interesting. So many times our own stories and our own pain feeds our purpose. I think so often we're drawn to something because of the experiences that we've lived through. And as a young orthodontist with my own practice and a family and all the things calling at me all the time,
Right.
I had a moment where I really had a massive breakdown for myself. And what that looked like was, looking back on it now, I recognize it as complete exhaustion and fight or flight. And my fear flavor, and I talk a lot about our unique fear flavors, but my fear flavor was flight, flee. And so what that looked like in my world was I ran from everything. So when I had this breakdown moment, I fire sailed my practice as quickly as I could. I went to a bankruptcy attorney. I went to a divorce attorney. I fled the state. I think if I could have, I might have left my children. I was in such a terrified place that I just felt so inadequate, so unworthy, and not enough that I thought the world really would be better off if I just got out of there. And, that experience was such a beautiful moment. And I look back at it now as a huge gift, but it didn't feel like it at the time. It felt terrifying. And the one thing I learned in that journey, the most important thing, was the only thing I couldn't run away from was myself. And that was the beginning of my personal development and rediscovery of myself and my own power. And in the following years, as I was re-identifying myself with myself, learning the incredible capacity that I have, the incredible beauty of who I am, who I had forgotten, now I started putting my life back together again. And what that culminated in was I started a new orthodontic practice from scratch. And suddenly this business took off and it was the most successful thing. I became the #1 orthodontic practice in the state without even trying, working 3 days a week. And what I learned was when we feed and fuel ourselves, that's when we start to see the beauty ripple effect around us. I used to think that success was necessary in order for me to find happiness. I used to wait and think, I'll be happy when I'm successful. And what I learned was it's the exact opposite. that happiness,
Wow.
prioritizing happiness is what brings greater success.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. I want to go back a little bit to something you said because I know so many women, leaders in their homes, in their workplaces, community, church. I've seen it. Feel that sense that you felt of this is just too much. This is just so much. This is, you're hurting. You're being harmed, but you just can't wrap your head around how these things that aren't sharp or heavy are causing trauma to you, and they want to leave. They have that same feeling that you had, like, if I could just walk away from here, pick up my keys and leave everything. So I'm wondering, to get to that point though, were there actually things happening in different areas of your life that were you just weren't equipped to deal with it, um, physically, financially, however, you were not getting help? Or was it just emotional? Was it all emotional? Were there external things that were causing you to feel this way?
I told myself there were external things causing me to feel that way. That was the
Mhm,
story I had. And I could, if you had asked me this question 16 years ago, I could have listed, it was 2008 and the stock market crashed.
mhm,
My husband was in a residency program and never home. So I was a single mom.
mhm.
It was hard to find good help. I had bought a practice that was failing and I was trying to I had all these excuses
Right.
for reasons why I was feeling the way I felt, and all of them were outside of me. And the truth is that those external components of life are always happening. We were talking about it before we got on the call today.
Right.
Things outside of our control happen all the time.
Yes.
And the inadequacy was within me. So there was some truth to what I felt. I was the problem.
Mhm.
But what I didn't realize was I was also the solution. That all of those things in my environment could have continued to happen. And within me, there was a power that I hadn't yet called upon or hadn't yet respected in myself to be able to navigate those waters.
Yes.
So, is it true that nobody in my education or my upbringing had gifted me those tools or taught me how to manage my nervous system when I was activated, my mindset when my thoughts were telling me things? Yes, that's true. But the only person who could do that was myself. And tucking into that power was everything for me. And that's really my mission in life now, is to serve those incredible women in leadership roles who have not yet witnessed their own power, to not put their power in the hands of the economy, the weather, your
Right.
patients, your clients, your children, but really that power stays within you.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, we
Mm,
do when we feel like when things seem out of control that we don't have any control, and that power is really recognizing your ability to navigate your own life. You do have
yes.
options, you have choices, and I've been there. It just feels like everything is over my head. I can't do anything about this. And that's, in the Southern Baptist tradition, we say that's the enemy
Mm,
trying to diminish your inherent power and your abilities, that you are so much stronger than you know. So you
mm,
go from that, you turn your life around beautifully. Kudos to you. And then you come up with the concept of radical happiness, not just
mm.
happiness, but radical happiness.
Yes.
What does that look and feel like?
Radical happiness, the word radical, I love because happiness itself can feel like a radical act, especially as a woman in service,
Mhm.
as so many of us are called to. Some of us in the healthcare professions, some of us in terms of leadership and nurturing in other ways, some of us in terms of mothering. right? Or even caring for our families. So many of us are called to some form of service. And so when we're constantly giving to others, that idea of asking for or owning happiness for ourselves feels radical. It feels radical because we were modeled by incredible women, our mothers and our grandmothers, who sacrificed themselves for us and sacrificed themselves for the world around them. And we honor them and we respect them. But that part of ourselves needs to be revisited. And that part is what feels so radical, to then say, no, I deserve and am worthy of fueling and feeding my own happiness. You know, it's so interesting. I meet with a lot of clients, as you were mentioning. I coach many incredible women in healthcare, leaders in healthcare. And I'll say to them, you know, what is it that you've done for yourself recently? And we've heard this question so often, but when you reflect and you realize, wow, I've been supporting and upholding everyone else around me, and I've forgotten my power to serve myself. And that act is radical, to really stand forward and say, no, I deserve and I'm worthy of fueling my own happiness. And I think many people are very good at this. Many men are very good at this. I think we can learn a lot from the incredible men in our lives in terms of their taking on the responsibility for their own happiness, serving themselves. And it's a beautiful feminine act to be able to do that as well. And that's why I love the word radical, because it reminds us that it feels radical, but it really is within our own power. And it's something that we've had all along.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. And your reference to, you know, learning something from the men in our lives about that. I had 9 uncles, was married a long time. I have 2 sons, and their ability to compartmentalize and to put up boundaries before we were even talking about boundaries. I am going to work out. I am golfing. I am watching the game right now, you know, and we get mad and huff and puff and we're washing and cleaning, and they, you know, sit down. I need some me time. I need some quiet time. And, you know, we look at it and we criticize, but there is something, as you're saying, to caring for yourself. And it may not be those particular things, but I remember looking at my calendar back when we were doing the big paper calendars, and everyone was on there but me.
Yes.
And that's when I started writing down, not just saying I'm going to have me time, exercise time, invest in these courses, but I put it on the calendar, no matter how small, to remind me this time is for me and everybody else who could see the calendar. You know, that's mommy's time.
I love that practice.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so interesting because I think we've demonized people in our lives who have done that very well.
Yes.
Because sometimes it hurt us, right? When he was neglected, whoever he is, and now I'm assigning him a masculine name, but many of us can imagine somebody in our lives that way. When he took care of himself, I was left out, and my needs were not met. So we demonized that self-serving happiness, and that's why radical happiness feels so radical, because we actually have to unlearn that component of what we used to demonize. So not with any disrespect, we needed to do that to learn the pain so that we could stand up and take care of ourselves. But the incredible thing about women, and this is what gets so exciting for me, is that when we serve our own needs, it doesn't mean that other people will suffer, because that's the story that we've taken along with us. When that man in your life or that person in your life took care of his needs and it hurt you, we embedded a narrative that if I do that, if I take care of myself, other people are going to hurt or are going to suffer. And the spectacular thing that we learn when we start to feed and fuel our own needs and our own happiness is that actually the opposite happens. The
Yes.
ripple effect of teaching our daughters a new way and of giving our sons the permission to not be held accountable is so freeing. And the same is true for our patients, for the teams that we lead. When I'm not putting the responsibility of my happiness on
Right.
you, I now give you back your autonomy.
Right.
And now we can be in a place where I can serve you from a place of true love, as opposed to what often it turns into is resentment or frustration, and so let me back that up a little bit. What I witnessed in my patients and in my children and even in my husband was I felt like everyone needed a piece of me all the time. And when they needed a piece of me all the time, I gave a piece of me all the time. And then I started silently resenting. I noticed
or
that
not so silently resenting.
Yeah. Not it. Thank you.
All right.
And that's the part of me that day when I looked in the mirror broke me, is that I didn't even like that woman in the mirror anymore. And I'm getting emotional thinking about it, is because that was not in alignment with who I was. Who I was in my core and in my heart was wanting to serve and not wanting to resent.
Right.
And we don't have to have it one way or the other. It's not self-serving or serving others.
Right.
We actually get to hold both, which is so miraculous. And this is where I love to say you're so much more powerful than you give yourself credit for, because you really can serve and hold space for what you need and show up for others. And it's in an even more plentiful way. That old saying, you can't pour from an empty cup, is so much deeper in its meaning than we give it credit for. We get to fill our own cups and then we get to pour from it. We don't need someone else to fill our cup. We actually get to do it for ourselves.
Absolutely. And they're not mutually exclusive. I totally agree with you, though we tend to want to intertwine them or lean more toward one than the other. But what I really love, and I have this same belief about being responsible for your own joy, for your own happiness, your own peace, however you want to put it, is that when you let other people have that responsibility, if they give it to you, they can take it away.
Always.
But if it's coming from inside, if it's me, if it's my responsibility, I'm not happy, what do I need to do about it? And how do I maintain it? Then no one else can take that away. If it's gone, it's because I let it go. It's not because you took it. And that, I was in my 40s before I got that, because I would get angry and as well, when my significant other was doing their thing they wanted to do. The other thing I found I was doing, Taryn, is making stuff important that wasn't even a big deal. We have just got to do this right now. Why won't you help me? I want to pot this plant. You said you'd hold the soil. It's just because I want to do it. It's a control thing. I just want to do it. It's not urgent. It doesn't have to be done. And then I'm mad because, their agenda is not mine.
And then what happens is a silent self-shaming.
Yes.
Because there's a part of you that knows that pot doesn't need to be planted today. And that's the part that we don't always talk about, is the self-shaming that happens when we're out of alignment with ourselves.
Yes.
And what's so interesting is what got you to that place. And I love that beautiful analogy, that beautiful story, because we can all relate to that, is what got you there was your nervous system. Now I'm going to go a little sciencey here, but
do it. Let's do it.
We feel unsafe, right? Someone took something away from us, like you just said. We were expecting a thing, whether that was from a patient or a team member or our husband or our kids. We were expecting a certain way of showing up. They took it away. By the way, had nothing to do with us. Not a thing to do with us. But we tell ourselves it did. And then we go into this sympathetic nervous system storm, and it's your body's beautiful way of protecting you.
Mm-hmm.
Your body is designed to help you survive. And the moment you tell your body, there is a lion chasing me and I am in danger, your body goes into this beautiful place called fight or flight.
Yeah.
Because you got to outrun the lion. That's
Yes.
it. And that's when urgency steps in and that potted plant seems so much more important. Or the emails, or, needing to assert your authority,
Mm-hmm.
or needing to regain control. It's rooted in our nervous system.
Yes.
And as very intellectual, highly capable, high achieving women, we forget that we have a body. We tend to live from the neck up. We want to know all the things, understand all the things, reason through all the things. And we forget about that. The rest of our body has a nervous system that's activated and triggered, and that we can actually tap into understanding our bodies, recognizing when our bodies are in fight or flight. And there are actually practices we can do with our bodies to calm ourselves back down so that we can regulate our nervous system back into parasympathetic calm and now access those beautiful, brilliant parts of our forebrain that are there to serve us, like compassion, time management, all those executive functions like task initiation, clarity, perspective, those things that we lose when our bodies go and try to run away from the tiger.
Right.
And this is one of the components that's so exciting for me to be able to bring to incredible women, is learning to get back into their bodies and drop out of the rational reasoning mind that wants to make sense of everything, when sometimes it's not possible to make sense of it at all.
It certainly is not in this world anyway.
No.
Not in this world. I believe it was on LinkedIn recently, that you wrote about the importance of recognizing and addressing personal traumas. Can you share with us how you came to this realization?
Oh, that's such a great question on the heels of what we were just talking about, because your nervous system is imprinted with past wounds and traumas. So there are things that can happen, and this comes from all those beautiful research papers written studying war veterans and PTSD. But there are things that might happen in your world that trigger and activate your nervous system without you even knowing, because it goes through a part of your brain called your amygdala that it processes it before it even gets to your forebrain. So it happens in microseconds. But your traumas are what imprinted that new neural network, and they're with you. So when we understand our past traumas, now we can start to understand, why does that woman why do I always feel stressed out when I'm around her? It might be her perfume. It might not even be anything about her. It might be the way she smiles that reminds you, or your very, very dark recesses of your mind, of your memory, of something that traumatized you once before. So when we can start to witness and be aware of our reactivity to people, places, events, things, when we see, ooh, that really rubbed me. Now I'm feeling a little stressed. I'm noticing my whole body feeling stressed and anxious, or I'm noticing that controlling behavior, or I'm noticing binge eating, whatever your fear flavor is.
Sure.
We get to ask ourselves, what just happened? What was the thought I just had? What were the events in my environment? And we can peel back those layers to discover what it is that have initially caused that trauma, and recognize that it was something outside of us that is not of us. So this is obviously why we go to see coaches and therapists to help us uncover those. But here's the beautiful thing. We get to reprogram those subconscious beliefs and heal from them. And it's part of why this journey of being a human being is so spectacular, because our nervous systems are unique to each one of us because of our life experience.
Right.
So what you experienced in your life is completely different to mine. And that means our nervous systems are completely different.
Okay.
So you're not going to experience the same kind of activation or triggering as I do. And your nervous system is going to be calmed in a way that's very different from mine.
All right.
And there's certain things. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I got a question on this. Just, I get the nervous system part, and, you know, I'm wondering though, in regards to trauma, there are things that happen childhood or that are so traumatic that our brains, our bodies will block off the actual memory of what happened, to protect us. But you can still be triggered. So in terms of addressing personal traumas, you can recognize that you have this reaction, something about that person, that smile, that smell. I mean, I talk about all the time how biscuits immediately bring to mind for me, my big mama. But what if I smell something and I get this awful feeling every time, but I can't remember why? Is it still possible to change behavior and address that when you're not even sure quite what, caused you to feel that way?
Yes. The answer is yes. And what it requires is subconscious work.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where we get to step into a subconscious level of your brain that's not in your memory or in your conscious brain. You're saying, I don't remember what happened. And you're so right. There are some traumas, big T traumas, sometimes little T traumas, and that's just a description of how we as society gauge trauma, but really each of that is we are affected differently, all of us. But sometimes if the trauma is strong enough, we dissociate 100%. By the way, fun fact, many leaders who are enormously effective, or many doctors who are enormously effective, are very good at dissociating. So when the patient starts to code on the table, they're cool as a cucumber because they learned how to dissociate. They learned how to compartmentalize.
It's necessary.
And it actually draws us to those professions because we get really good at it.
Yeah.
To answer your question, yes, it is possible. And this is what we do in hypnotherapy. So in a hypnotherapeutic state, we can actually access parts of your mind, even as far back as third trimester in utero. So it turns out that as early as in third trimester in utero, we're receiving information.
Wow.
Like little cameras that are running 24 hours a day with sound and visual cues. Not so much visual when you're in your mom's uterus, but definitely sound. But even at that time, we're beginning to form ideas and beliefs around our safety, our worth, and what's possible for us. And even that component, even that memory can be accessed in subconscious healing and in hypnotherapeutic work. But what it requires, and now this is going to bring us all back here, is safety in your nervous system. We can't access those recesses of your mind if your body has told you you are unsafe. It is not safe to look at those things. That is too scary. That was too big and scary. And that's why you're still dissociating. So the first place we have to start is our nervous system. We have to start with giving us back our safety, and then we can access those memories.
Sweet. Oh, that was deep. That was deep. I'll have to listen to that a few times to soak it all in. I love the way you just led us through that. And I'm glad I asked that question. It wasn't on my script, but I just, from personal experience and other people, that sometimes the behavior and reaction is so out of proportion to what is going on. It's like, what the heck is wrong with you? And they literally don't know. They just are not safe. I was gonna say they're not happy, but they don't feel safe. Thank you for explaining on that. We are running short on time, and I've got to get this question in. This is so good. This is so good. We'll have to have you back. But one of the things you mentioned to me is that it's key to prioritize our well-being without guilt. And I think we've danced around that a little bit here today. But can you share with us some specific strategies that you recommend to your clients to help them prioritize their well-being without feeling selfish?
It's really interesting, Mo. It comes back to safety again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when we're experiencing guilt, so let's just create the difference between shame and guilt. So shame is when you've done an action or spoken in a way that other people deem not good, right? That's when we feel shame. When I said something and I think you're going to think something about the way I just said that. That feels like shame. Guilt is when we do or say something that we ourselves feel uncomfortable about. So I did the thing and I'm feeling really bad about it. So it's important for us to make that distinction because I think often we confuse the two. Mm-hmm. It's important to make that distinction because when we realize, oh, that's shame, we can start to extricate our expectations of what other people expect of us. So mom guilt, we hear this a lot, mom guilt.
Sure.
But really, could it just be that you're trying to force your own values to be accepted by the people around you? And are you actually acting in alignment with what you want? And that's actually something that you feel in integrity with, but you're feeling bad about what other people will judge. Okay, great. Let's go back to guilt. Guilt is when we feel like we've done or said something that's out of alignment with our own values. Now we're feeling bad. Once again, we can return to safety. When we recognize that anything you've ever done has had purpose, even the bad things. So if you've lied, so obviously lying is one of those things that none of us want to do, and I hold.
But we all do. Right.
But we all do.
Right.
And then we beat ourselves up about it. But when we can honor, okay, I lied. Let me give myself some grace because at the time I thought that it was protecting me from XYZ. I know better now. That was not a true story. That was a narrative I was telling myself. But let me give myself permission to have been unsafe and acted in a way to help myself. Then we get to choose again and say, oh, you know what? I am completely safe. So I lied recently. And this is something that I work on all the time. But I caught myself a couple months ago telling a very bold lie. A friend of mine, it's a longer story I won't go into, but I lied to my friend about not being available for something that she needed me to be available for. And I went home that night and I realized I beat myself up about it. And then I realized, wait a minute, Taryn, I lied because I was able to identify that I thought she wouldn't like me anymore or I'd lose that connection. That fear of being left out, of being unloved, is a primal fear. Back in the caveman days, if you were left out of society, you died. If you were kicked out of the clan, you couldn't survive. So that part of us needing to be a part, needing to belong, is a primal need. And in that moment, I lied because I thought she would accept me if she heard something other than the truth. I'm not justifying the behavior. The truth is, whether or not she accepted me doesn't matter because guess what? I'm safe.
Right.
I'm no longer living in the caveman days and I can speak my truth. And if she accepts me or doesn't accept me, it actually has nothing to do with me. It might be about her story. So we can address guilt by first giving ourselves safety. Safety for regardless of what you did. It doesn't matter what you did. Maybe you mothered in a way you wished you hadn't. You screamed at your kid and you're feeling really bad about it. Offering yourself safety and love and compassion is step one. And by the way, that feels radical.
That is a beautiful thing. And
Yeah.
it's harder than it sounds, but that's why you have coaches like Dr. MacCarthy to help you access those areas of your mind where you'll feel safe, and coaches like me who help you with communication, because we also tend to over-explain and forget that no is a complete sentence in every language, which, I think about that with you and your friend. You can just say, no, I'm not available. And that eliminates a lot of it, but that's a growth thing of, we've learned you got to give a reason. You got to explain why you're not doing this. No, you don't.
And
No, I'm
it's
not
a safety
available.
thing
Thank you.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a beautiful realization that I am safe to say no.
Right.
I am safe to say no.
And it's okay. And it may eliminate some people from your lives who don't need to be there if they can't accept that and you can't maintain your safe environment. Girl, I could just go on forever, but we have got to wrap this up. You are phenomenal. I am so proud to call you my colleague and so excited that you've been a guest on Perpetual Motion today. Please tell listeners how to connect with you online and learn more about your services and where you are and what you're doing, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. You can find the Business of Happiness podcast anywhere where you like to access podcasts. And to find out more about me on my website, thebizofhappiness.com, B-I-Z of happiness. And I'm on all the social media channels, so you can just look for the Business of Happiness there. And Mo, thank you so much for having me on the show today. This has been so much fun.
Indeed, it has. And I've learned a lot, which is really why I do this. I love it that other people listen, but it is my ongoing masterclass. And I am so, so grateful for your time and information and great energy. And thank each of you listeners for joining us each week. To listen to these amazing guests, thought leaders from all over the globe. So please subscribe to be notified of new episodes each week and learn more about me, my services, keynote speaking, and books on my website, drmoanderson.com. Until next time, be well and be safe.